I'm Micah Smith, and I'm a developer evangelist here at Automation Anywhere. In this session, we're going to take a look at hyperautomation, and we're going to specifically be talking about self-improving bots. Let's dig right into it. So first off, we're going to define what is hyperautomation. I know that's a phrase that kind of gets thrown around a lot, especially in the RPA space, but we're going to talk about exactly what that is and what that means for your automations. We'll then take a look at a use case. And this use case probably won't be the exact same that you would use at your organization, but hang with me here. We're going to follow the use case and see how that pans out. We're then going to look at a demo of a current process, which is making static decisions. And we'll talk about what that means, and we'll talk about the implications thereof. We'll then take a look at process improvements, and we'll talk about some process improvements that we can make to make our process a little bit more dynamic. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll do a demo, we'll take a look at the process, and we'll understand dynamic decision making within our processes. So first off, before we get started, I want to have just a quick preface to say that this use case is not going to be exactly what you use within your organization. This is not exactly going to apply to you, but that's okay. You're going to see yourself in this use case. You're going to see applications of this throughout your organization. So hang with me here. The other thing I want to say is that this is intended to be an interesting demo that combines many of the products that are available from Automation Anywhere. We're going to be looking at AARI. We're going to be looking at IQBot. We're going to be looking at Bot Insight. We're going to see how those different products can fit together to create a really good solution. So I want you to hang with me through that so you can see exactly how these different pieces fit together. If you're not familiar with those, that's fine. I'm going to explain how they can all fit together as we go through this. Let's go ahead and get started. So first off, what is hyperautomation? Hyperautomation is the combination of robotic process automation, or RPA, and artificial intelligence. Together, those technologies enable end-to-end business acceleration and an accelerated digital transformation. So that definition is kind of cool. That works. What I think is best to describe this is a Venn diagram. So in our Venn diagram, on the left-hand side, we have RPA. And I would say that RPA is task-centric, rule-based automation across GUIs and APIs. So what does that mean? Well, RPA really fits in the space between a graphical user interface. So that's, hey, me clicking and entering data on a thick client application or on a website, and the space of entering data into an API. So API is an application programming interface. And that's how I can interface with the back end of many applications. I might do data lookups. I might look up my customer, things like that. So I can have my bots exist in that space where, hey, sometimes they're working on top of the front end of an application, just like a user would. And sometimes they're calling these back-end APIs to take advantage of the functionality offered therein. Now, on the other side of our Venn diagram, we have artificial intelligence. And really a subset of artificial intelligence is machine learning. And specifically, we want to talk about and define machine learning as data-driven modeling designed to mimic human decision-making. So where we have the difference there is that on one side, our artificial intelligence is looking to help us mimic the decisions that humans are making, to do things like recommendation engines, to do things like dynamic pricing models, where we need to make sure that we're adjusting our pricing based on our competitors or based on our supply. And also identifying things like at-risk customers. We might say, hey, we've identified the following customers might be leaving soon. How do we make sure that we're doing outreach to engage them to make sure they stay a part of our family? So in between those two spaces is where we would really define hyperautomation. So it's taking the best of RPA, taking the capabilities that allow us to automate on top of GUIs, those graphical user interfaces, on top of APIs, and merging that with the capabilities of machine learning to not only automate human actions, but also automate human decision making. Cool. So let's talk about a use case. And again, you're not going to see yourself in this exact use case necessarily, but hang with me. Some of the parts of this will definitely be applicable to other use cases within your organization. We have a fictitious company here called Infinity Lending and Trust, and part of their mortgage pre-approval process was previously a mess of manual work. And it would mean a lot of copying and pasting data. It would mean emailing tasks to loan officers. It would also mean creating documents out of non-standardized templates. Let's take a look at that process. So it starts off with a customer who might call the national call center for Infinity Lending and Trust, saying, hey, I'm about to start looking at homes. I want to be able to make an offer on a home. I need a pre-approval letter to be able to do so. That call center representative would take down the information from that customer, their name, are they going to have a co-applicant, what their income is, co-applicant income, kind of what price range they're looking at for homes, things like that. That data would then be emailed off to a loan officer. And that loan officer would then have to make a decision about that pre-approval. Should we grant this pre-approval to this individual or this couple? Should we not grant it? And then they would send that decision over to someone who would send out the actual pre-approval or denial letter. And that person would then take the details from the email of the loan officer, fill that into some kind of form, right? Sometimes that's a Word document that's version 1.1, and hey, I've been using that for a long time. For other people, it might be, hey, I've got this newer version of the template, I'm using this one, or I'm not even using a template, I just kind of freestyle what I want to do. Regardless, a approval or denial letter is then sent out to the individual who had originally requested it in a non-standardized format. So it's kind of a mess of a process. Now, after implementing Automation 360, they've automated several pieces of that pre-approval letter generation process. And this is where I would say they have a really good process. This is a really mature process that we're going to look at. So first off, they've added another entry to the way that data can flow into their system. So our customers can call in to our national call center. They'll call into those customers, or those call into the call center, and the customers will be able to give their details to the agent. And the agent at this point, instead of just sending an email off to the loan approval officer, would actually fill that detail into AARI Web. Using AARI Web, they have a place to fill out all the details that are required and send that off through the appropriate process. Alternatively, customers could send in a application that they've filled out, whether through email or mailing it to them or through fax, and those documents could go through IQBot. Regardless, at this point right here, and hopefully you can see my mouse there, at this point after the IQBot and National Call Center, we have the same data, whether it's come in through a call or come in through a fax or an email or through a document, we have that same data. At that point, we have a partially automated decision that's taking place. So we're calling a bot. That bot is going to try and make a decision about the loan. And it's going to say, hey, is the total income for the applicants, whether that's a single person or two people who are applying together, is 25% of their income greater than the monthly payment for the loan that they're requesting. So it's a very hard set value on whether we're going to approve or not. If the item is approved, we'll automatically generate that pre-approval letter for them. If the item is not approved, then we're going to send it to a loan officer. And that loan officer has to then evaluate based on their application data whether we're going to still approve this loan even though they're not meeting that 25% threshold rule, or whether that loan pre-approval should be denied. Here, finally, we're automating the process of generating that approval or denial letter. So instead of having lots of different individuals who are copying and pasting data or manually hand keying it, what we're going to do is take the data from that original application. Again, whether it was IQBot or call center, really doesn't matter. We're taking that data, we're going to fill it into pre-approved, kind of brand approved templates that allow us to generate those letters in the exact same way every single time so that we have a consistent output from our process. Let's take a look at that demo. So I'm now in Automation Anywhere. I'm in Community Edition specifically, but we're going to take a look at this good process, and I want to show you exactly how this works. So here we can see that I've got a couple forms. I've got a loan approval form. I've got a get applicant details form. I also have a couple bots. I've got evaluate loan and generate pre-approval bot. I also have this process. And if you're not familiar with AARI, this is kind of a new thing that was introduced with AARI, and it's this concept of processes. So I'm going to open this up. And in the process builder, you can see that we essentially have the same capabilities that we would have to create a bot as far as like creating this logical visual flow. But it allows us to tie together the work of bots, humans, and this process, in its entirety to create an end-to-end process. So here at the top, we can see that the process starts with an entry point. And at this point, it's our get applicant details. I'm going to click preview that form so we can see this. But essentially, this is the form that the call center representative would use to enter the data into the form. And so this is, hey, the customer just called in. I'm going to take all the data that they just told me, the first name, the gender, the last name, the marital status, number of dependents, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to fill this form out. And that way I know exactly what details are needed for making a sound pre-approval loan decision. And I can send that off to whatever step is next, right? If I'm just a call center operator, I don't necessarily care what happens after this. I just need to get this detail, make sure the customer knows that they'll hear back in, X number of hours or days, and then I can, move on to the next call. After that task, we'll see that a bot is invoked. And that bot is designed to analyze our loan. And so that's where we're going to apply that exact same rule that I talked about, where we're looking for that 25% rule to see if this person can reasonably afford the loan that they're requesting. Now, our bot is going to try to make a decision on that loan. Now, it's only really factoring in one particular evaluation, which is that 25% rule. So if the loan can automatically be made, we'll jump over here in our process flow where we'll generate an approval letter. And I'll show you that process here because we're going to run this, but an approval letter would be generated. If the bot cannot make a decision on this loan based on that one criteria, then we're going to send this for a human review. And this is part of the real benefit of AARI Web, is that I have the ability to invoke humans to work on these tasks when I need to. So it could be that some of the applications come through and I don't have to send these to a human at all. Other applications will come through and I need a human to look at it to say, hey, these are all the details that we collected. Do you approve this loan or no? And so the user in this case will be asked to fill in, hey, do you approve this loan? Yes or no? All the rest of this data will be read-only because it really doesn't need to change. It was from the original application process. And my loan agent will be able to make an approval or denial of that pre-approval letter. Finally, if they submit yes, they say, hey, yep, this looks like it's a loan we should make, even though it didn't meet our automatic confidence thresholds. I'm going to send that to an approval process. Here we can see when I click on that, it puts the green arrow right here. That's still going to generate that same pre-approval letter. So even if it happens manually or if it happens automated, it's going to go to the same place. The human could also deny that letter or deny that loan, and they could say, hey, this is not a loan we should be making. In this case, a denial letter would be generated. And then finally, the human can actually cancel a process, and they would at this point say, hey, I'm not taking this one. Maybe the customer decided they don't want to do this anymore. Whatever the case, we could cancel it out. If we wanted to take other action at that point, we could. But for the purposes of this demo, we're just going to leave it at a canceled state. All right, so I'm going to run this and we can see exactly how it's going to work. So we're going to first see that screen that a call center representative would see. So I'm going to fill in some details. First name and last name, gender. We'll say that this individual is married. They have 2 dependents. They have a college degree. Their employer is, say they work at a high school. Loan term, we're going to say 360 months, which is the equivalent of 30 years. For the applicant income, let's say they make $5,000 for the applicant and $2,000 for the co-applicant. We'll say that they're looking for a loan that's $500,000 because I know that that one's probably going to be outside of the realm that they could afford. Credit history is yes, and we'll say that they're doing a suburban area for their property. So at this point, the bot is being invoked. Now, I want to call out something specific here in just a second. I think we're going to see a pop-up, so I don't want to be interrupted by that. But at this point, the monthly payment would be $2,108 a month. Their household income is $7,000 a month. And so it didn't meet our 25% rule. We're going to send this to a human for review. Now, a couple things I wanted to point out there. One, we saw that all this was running on my machine. That's only because I'm using Community Edition. And I just did the, kind of run process here. In a real production environment, what would happen is I would check this process into the public directory. It would be available through the AARI Web interface. And when a user went through to fill out that form, the bots that were running the bot steps in this process would actually be running on unattended bot runners. So even though we saw it all on my screen, that's just because I'm doing this as a demo. If this were a real production use case and not in Community Edition, I wouldn't see that bot coming up with its runtime window or anything like that. All of that would happen on that unattended bot runner. And it actually works off a device pool, so it could happen on any number of bot runners. Okay, so regardless, the loan officer now sees this form. All of the details are read-only. His or her role is really only to just say, yes, I approve, or no, I don't. I'm going to say yes here. We'll hit submit. Say, yeah, I think the person is good for that money. What we're going to see is that another bot runs. And again, this would be invisible to what's happening on the front end, but that bot will run. That bot is going to generate our pre-approval letter. Because we said yes, we approve that loan. And so at this point, the bot is going to generate that letter for us. We'll see that saved out locally here. And obviously, we could email it or do something else. But But the way that this bot works, it's writing to ctemp imagine 2021 within our Hyperautomation folder that was just created. We should see a folder for a good process. If I click on that, here I have my templates that were downloaded from GitHub, and I'll talk more about that in a little bit. And then I have my pre-approval letter that was generated. And so if I open this, we'll be able to see the pre-approval letter that's in our kind of standardized format. It's got our branding for the header and everything like that. We've got the person's name in here. We say, hey, you've been pre-approved. Here's some details about the loan. 3% interest rate is what we ran the pre-approval on. Your term, this is your monthly payment. Some more details about contacting us if you have questions, things like that. So this, I would say, is a very good process, right? We could see that IQBot could easily be plugged into this process. We could also see that as we're analyzing the loan and generating these pre-approval letters, that we could tie in Bot Insight to be able to give us some additional insights into the loans that we're making, the loans that we're rejecting, things like that. So this is a good process that could really use a lot of the power and a lot of the tools of Automation Anywhere. Now, how could we improve this process? Well, what we want to look at is the fact that what we were doing there was mimicking human actions, right? In our example, there was calculations that were being made to be able to determine the 25% rule for whether or not we should grant this person a loan or not. A human could technically do that. We're mimicking those human actions. So whether it's filling out that Word document to fill in the person's name and the loan details and things like that. In other examples, it might be clicking buttons within an application. Those are all static operations, right? They're happening the exact same way every single time. If I say to click this button on this particular page, the bot will click that button every single time. There's not really any kind of dynamic decision making that's happening. The bot's going to click that button. I would offer that if we created something called, and again, I'm just calling this for the purposes of our demonstration, a smart package, where we can design a package that's designed for mimicking human decision making as opposed to just mimicking human actions. And this is designed for more dynamic operations. So if I'm trying to identify dynamic pricing, if I'm trying to identify at-risk customers to contact, things like that, I could do those dynamic operations within a smart package. And we would call this a smart package because it's leveraging a machine learning model under the hood that allows the bot to make more dynamic decisions based on that model. So let's take a look at how we could improve the process that we just looked at. And I'll show you exactly how I built what we're going to take a look at in our next demo. So first off, we're going to start off with a machine learning model. Now, I'm using H2O AI, their Flow product. This is an open source tool from H2O.ai, and it's an AutoML tool, which means that it allows you to import your data set. It will allow you to go through, kind of parse the data set, choose your prediction column, things like that, and it will run AutoML, where it's going to take a look at lots of different machine learning algorithms and define the best one that would work for your data set. If you haven't used it, I would highly encourage you to take a look. It's a fun tool to use. This is a small screenshot of it, but it basically looks like a Jupyter notebook on steroids. And it's cool to use. It's a very visual experience. And the output of it can be used as we build our packages. So it outputs its models as either a model object, which they call a mojo, or a plain old Java object, which is a pojo, and it comes out as a jar. I would take the model that comes out of H2O, and I would package that with our package SDK. So my package SDK from Automation 360 plus my model allows me to build a smart package. And I'll set all the input field types so that my bot can make those predictions that the model requires. And I can then embed the model object directly into my package, or I can more dynamically allow a user to select it at runtime to determine what model should be used for that package. So from there, the output of that is a package, and that package can be used to consume the model that we've just created. So in the example screenshot here, my very first field is allowing me to select an ML model that was generated out of H2O to use within my package. And I can use that within my bots to help make more dynamic decisions. So I select my model object. I map all of my inputs. So just like the user filled all that data out in the call center, it's the first name, the last name, the employer, the dependents, all that kind of information. We map that to our smart package step within our bot, and then we get the predictions as an outcome. Now, for the model that we're using, the bot is saying yes or no as the outcome for my decision making on a pre-approval letter. So it's going to come back with me with a confidence threshold that says, hey, I'm 60% sure, yes, that should be approved, or I'm 40% no, that should be denied, right? And at that point, we're going to have to, within our AARI process, determine whether or not we should get a human involved. So what we're going to say is that if the model is not greater than 78% confident on an approval or a denial, we're going to use AARI to have a human in the loop to make a determination on that loan. So just like we saw in that last example, we're going to have a human involved, and that human's going to help us to make a determination on that loan. We're going to take the data that human used, right? So the human saw it was Ryan Nisus. We saw that they make $194,000 a year. We saw their income, all that kind of stuff. We're going to take that data plus the human-made decision, and we're going to use that data to retrain our model. And when we do that to retrain our model, not only are we taking advantage of the data that the human entered, but we're also improving our process going forward. So the next time a similar loan comes through, we should theoretically have our bot be able to make a more sound decision about that loan, as opposed to having to send to a human again. And so what we want to see as time goes on, tasks are increasingly automated with fewer and fewer tasks needing to be sent to the human for that manual review. Okay? So let's take a look at our target process now. And this first part looks identical to what we saw before, right? It can come through IQBot. It can come through a call center agent filling that data into AARI. But either way, we've got the same data at that same point. Our next step is sending that data to our automated decision, right? And that's our bot that's going to allow us to run that smart package that's going to invoke the model and make a determination about that loan. Like I mentioned before, we have a threshold that we've set up. We said, hey, if you're not 78% confident on either the yes or the no, we need to send that to a human. And so that's where we invoke that loan officer through AARI Web, just like we saw before. And based on that user's decision, we would then send that automated approval or denial letter through another bot. And that could happen like we have from the arrows here, either as an automated decision, or it could happen as a result of the loan officer's decision. Now, the one part that's unique about this process that we didn't really have before is that we're using the data from that loan officer's decision to facilitate retraining of our model. So that's going to be yet another data point that we can include in our data set, and we'll retrain and rebuild our model so that the next time a similar loan comes through, we should see that the bot has a better chance of making a more sound decision based on the training that it received from that loan officer. Okay? So let's see if we can get this to work in action here. So I'm back in my Hyperautomation demo folder, and this time I'm going to take a look at this great process. So this process looks very similar to what we had before. We have the same forms, we have the same bots, although they're changed very slightly. And then we also have this other bot that enables us to rebuild and retrain our model. So let's open up the process itself and take a look at this. So it starts off the same. We have that entry point, which is the web form for AARI. We then have our bot where we're going to analyze that loan. Now, in this bot is where we're actually using that smart package. And that smart package is going to actually be looking at a local directory for this particular example for that model. And if the model doesn't exist locally, we're going to automatically grab that from a shared resource directory. The bot's going to download that locally. It's going to use that model for its decision making. Now, if the model was sure, right? So here, like we said, we've got that 0.78 threshold. If the model wasn't sure, we're sending it to a human. So that's outcome possibility number one. Outcome possibility number two is that the model was sure and the model said, hey, the approved loan percentage, or my estimate on this, is that the loan should be approved based on this model. And so if that confidence is greater than 78% on that approval, we would automatically generate the approval letter. The third outcome is that the yes was not greater than 78%, and the prediction was that the no was the higher of the two, and the no was higher than 78%. In that case, we would generate a loan denial letter. Okay, so if, going back to our first one here, if the human said, hey, I need to make a determination on this loan, actually the process determines that a human needs to be involved. The human would then make a determination on that loan. And the human would then decide whether I'm going to actually make a decision or whether I'm going to cancel. So we had that same functionality before. Whether the human says yes or no, what we're going to do is take that data from the human's analysis and add a new data point to our model. And we're going to use that to rebuild our model. So this is that rebuild model step. Now, I'm including this in the process just because it's a demo and you want to be able to see everything work. If you were really going to do something like this in a production environment, most likely you'd want to rebuild that model only once per week, maybe once per month if you want to. Probably do it on like an off hours just in case it takes a long time. I've included it as a part of the process here just so we can see it work in real time. But you typically want to include that as a totally separate process that happens in off hours. Regardless, if they approved it, we're going to jump up here. We'll click on this. We can see the green arrow up here. We would jump up to the generate approval letter. If they denied it, we would jump up to the generate denial letter, and that would be right here. So, whoops, let's scroll back over here. Let's go ahead and run this process, and we'll see exactly how this works. I'm going to close AARI right here so we get a new window. Okay, so this time I'm going to fill in the details. Tim Langer, we're going to say he's a male, he's married, he has 0 dependents, he has a high school education. We'll say that he works at Blockbuster. He wants a loan term for 360 months. We'll say that he has an income of $4,300 a month, and his spouse makes $2,013, very specific number of dollars per month. They want a loan amount of $194,000. They have a credit history greater than 5 years, and they are buying a property in a rural area. Now, I'm going to submit this. At this point, the task is being sent to the bot that's going to use that machine learning model to make a determination on the loan. And we're going to see it pop up here in just a second. So the bot says, hey, I'm 70% sure this should be approved, 29% sure this should be denied. Now, based on our threshold, that means this is coming for a human review. So we're kind of playing the role of the loan officer now, where we're seeing this loan show up. I'm going to hit yes to approve that loan because I'm going to say, yeah, it looks like all their details are good. They're making a pretty good income. I'm going to hit submit. Now, at this point, based on our process that we looked at, what's happening is we're going to be retraining our model, right, based on the data from that entry that I just put in. So we're taking, hey, this is Tim Langer. He works at Blockbuster. He makes $4,300 a month. He's getting a loan at $194,000. So we're taking that, we're adding that as another data point to our data set, and then we're automatically retraining our model as a part of that process. What we should see is that the next time you run this process, the bot is making better decisions because that model has been improved, right? Because it's learning from the human's input, we should see that the model makes more sound decisions the next time. So we're going to let that finish up. I'll be honest, the data set that I'm using for this only has like roughly 500 rows. So it's not terribly large. It will train relatively quickly, compared to some machine learning algorithms and models that we've heard training before. But it's going to train that model. It will store that locally, and we'll show you this here in a second where it's going to save it. So if we go to Hyperautomation and we go to Great Process, it looks like it's finished up right now. We can see this is my data set. It's downloaded that data set from the GitHub repository. It has added the new observation that we just had from that loan approval, and it has then retrained that model. And so this is our retrained model right here. This is the h2ogenmodel.jar. This is what was used to help retrain that model. It, again, automatically gets downloaded. And then we've got our pre-approval letter, in this case, that was generated for Tim Langer. We should see that right here. Very similar to what we saw before, right? Hey, you've been approved. This is the loan terms, things like that. So the first time that we ran this one, we had a confidence of, I think it was 70 point something percent that yes, the model says to approve that loan. Let's run this again. Now, when we run it again, what we're going to do is fill in the same details that we did the first time because we want to see how the bot is able to improve its decision making. So I'm going to change the name just so we have a different name showing up, but I'll fill the rest of the details in the same. So we'll say this is for Matt Ireton. Gender is male. Whoops, make sure we spell that right. He is married. Number of dependents is 0. High school education. Before we said Blockbuster, let's say Redbox. Because really the employer only applies to the model if they're self-employed. The loan term, 360 months. Income is 4,300. Co-applicant income is 2013. $194,000 for our loan amount. Yes, they have a credit history, and they want a rural area property. Let's hit submit. So this time the bot is going to work off of our new model. And here we see it has an approval rate this time of 78% and a denial rate of 21%. So at this point, it was above our 78% threshold, right? Just barely, but it was above that 78% threshold. And now we can see that the bot is going through and actually generating that pre-approval letter automatically. So we have essentially worked the human out of this particular process. We don't need to send this one for review because the model was confident enough on its own to make that determination. And so now if I come back out here, I should see I have a pre-approval letter generated for Matthew Ireton and family. And here we can see, hey, they have their pre-approval letter. It was generated the same way, and we didn't have to have human involvement. So for a quick conclusion, RPA is extremely effective in the space between APIs and UIs, right? And that's a big thing that I always stress when I'm talking to people about RPA. You can take advantage of APIs. You can take advantage of graphical user interfaces. You can click on buttons. You can fill web forms, whatever you need to do. That gets extended even further when I'm able to combine that with the capabilities of machine learning. With human-in-the-loop capabilities, we always want to be exploring how we can make best use of that human-bot interaction. In this case, I'm taking the data from the human decisions and I'm using that to rebuild my model and retrain my model so that the bots can make better decisions in the future. It doesn't always have to be that way. You don't have to use machine learning with AARI. This is just a fun demo so you could see that as a possibility. But it could be that I'm making use of the data that humans enter through AARI and is sent to the bot through my bot insights. And I can see more insights about my data and my use cases so that I can explore maybe different ways to automate processes and have different insights into my customers or to the use cases that I'm automating. Your RPA practice and your organization's practice itself is a journey. And I say that because this is kind of an advanced demo. I wouldn't expect every single customer to be doing this in their first 3 months of bot building or anything like that. If you've been at this for a long time, you've been doing Automation Anywhere and Automation 360, and you're quite experienced, maybe you start to explore a new concept like this where you can engage with machine learning models to make decisions within your process. If you're very new to RPA and this is like totally way above what you're doing, that's totally fine. There's still tons of great opportunities to automate use cases where machine learning isn't needed at all, right? And there's lots of that low-hanging fruit. There's lots of great applications of RPA where hyperautomation doesn't have to be a thing. So this is really just to be a cool demo so that you can see some possibilities. Hopefully it can inspire you to think about how you might use these concepts within your organization. But by all means, don't feel like that every process has to look like this. So as a call to action, last two things here. The current state and target state, what I call the good process and the great process, those demos are available for download. So we'll have the link below in the text so that you can download those. I'll also have some instructions on setting up your machine. I made them very, very simple so that anyone can, straight out of box, start to run these. A lot of the code will reference things that are on a GitHub repository for Imagine 2021. And that way you can always start over with a fresh model if you need to, if you made some decisions you're not terribly proud of as a pretend loan officer. Finally, if you enjoyed this session and you like these kind of demos, take a look at developer.automationanywhere.com. We have lots of tutorials there. We've got demos. We've got tutorials for users who are just getting started. We've got tutorials for users who want to explore machine learning and some more advanced concepts like control room APIs. So definitely take a look at that and see if there's some resources there that can help you. I'm Micah Smith. Thanks so much for hanging out with me during this session. If you enjoyed this, be sure to tune in to the AARI tutorial session where we're going to go through building out an AARI process on our own. And we'll see exactly how I built that process, and you'll build one along with me. Go be great. Enjoy some more of the Automation Anywhere Imagine sessions. Have a good day.